Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rational Ethical Atheist. Today we're going to be talking about the Horseshoe theory and why it basically means that anybody with any beliefs is really just like a social justice warrior, or as I like to call them, SJWs. Just really stupid people. But before I go into that, I'd like to just give a slight overview of how I got into being one of the leading thought leaders of the rationalist community, and how I've really been enlightened. It all started when I was about 16 years old. So last year, I was in church and I was so bored because the pastor was talking about something stupid. And that's when I thought to myself, well, I wonder if God's not real. So I went home that night, or that day, after Sunday school, some real stupid stuff. The only thing good about church was snacks at Sunday school. I like snacks. I like to eat. I like bananas too. I like to eat bananas. I like everything about bananas. You can eat them. You can do other stuff with them. Yeah. But anyway, so I went home after church and I googled, is God real? And I came across a Christopher Hitchens video. And now the Christopher Hitchens, or as I like to call him, the Hitch, he's a smart guy. He's a funny guy. I like to think of myself kind of as him. I'll watch his videos and just think about how his sense of humor is like mine, and when I'm around with my friends, they laugh sometimes. So it's kind of like his like charming British accent is like my Midwestern accent in a way. And so when I watch him, I kind of think about, oh, that's like me. I have those thoughts too. And so I watched this Christopher Hitchens video, and I found out that no, God is not real. And Mother Teresa was not a good person, and God's not real. So, yeah, if you haven't watched any Christopher Hitchens, you should really watch Christopher Hitchens, because him, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Maher, there's some real geniuses, and I like to think of myself like them, kind of. Like I run a YouTube account, and I have lots of 15, 16-year-old followers, and in a way, it's kind of like what Bill Maher does, or Neil deGrasse Tyson does. Another great thinker, a guy by the name of Bill Nye. I think he's like a professional scientist. I think he has like multiple PhDs in science, because he loves science. That's one thing I love, is that these guys, these thinkers, they love science just like me. In a way, it's like kind of like I'm like them. Maybe I haven't really accomplished much, and maybe I live with my parents and stuff. But I'm kind of, I don't know. I like to think of myself as witty, funny, smart, good-looking, that sort of stuff. And so basically, yeah. So I watched this Stephen Hawking, or Christopher Hitchens, sorry, not Stephen Hawking. He's another great, smart guy. I love Stephen Hawking. But I watched this Christopher Hitchens video, and I found out, God's not real. And so then I spent, a few years researching atheism, and I'm a devout atheist, and it's really cool because it's like one of my core identities is my lack of belief in something. And, that's how it makes me unique, because I'm not a sheep like, Christians or Mormons or Scientologists or people who believe in the flying spaghetti monster. I believe that stuff isn't there, and that makes me really, really smart, because, it takes a lot of brain power to realize that, lack of evidence towards something that means that something might not be there. So people have this funny thing they call faith, and I realize, I don't have any faith. I'm I'm a materialist. That's why I like sci-fi, like Star Wars, and then series like Game of Thrones, that sort of stuff. Just real thinking man stuff. Yeah, so that's how I got started. I read that, and then I came across some YouTube videos. This guy named Ken Ham, who's a creationist, and I was just looking up stuff about him, and I saw he had a debate with Bill Nye, and major props to Bill Nye. It was a real hard debate. It's really hard to debate against people who don't believe in evolution and don't believe that there's any differences between between different things. As you can tell, I've done a lot of research about this sort of stuff. So that's how I got started, And so some people would say, okay, you did that, now what else are you going to do? And that's a valid question. So what I did after that is I started watching, people like Thunderfoot, and he was so good. He talked about how, creationism isn't real. That's just really fascinating. Because creationism isn't real, and after about 6 or 7 hour-long videos about that, I feel like I kind of got the picture even more, and I realized even more that creationism isn't real, and that evolution's real, and that was just really mind-blowing to me. Yeah. So after that, I stumbled across these things called SJWs, and what they are is they're these really, just really stupid, crazy people who obsess over stuff, and they really blow stuff out of proportion. And so that's when I decided I was going to make a YouTube channel dedicated, and I mean dedicated, hundreds, if not thousands of videos. I'm not sure how many I've made at this point, about, just like your average college goer, somebody who has blue hair and half-shaved head and weighs about 400 pounds, just the average college person. And I spent about 3 hours weekly making videos about that sort of stuff. And some say, oh, you're not really you're not really like providing any value. You're just mocking mentally disabled people. You're just obsessing over certain things and that don't really matter. The people who are just kind of insane. And that's a valid concern. If you're an SJW, you probably would not be focusing on you, and that makes sense. But somebody needs to focus on these crazy SJWs, because nobody's doing it right now. And I figured this is a small niche. I should, I really need to document all these crazy SJWs. And so then, when I first started, you had the SJWs. When I first started, you had these SJWs that, they're always left wing. They hate white men, that sort of stuff. But then recently, there's been this uptick, this movement called the alt-right, and it's really sick. They say they're right wing, but they're actually just SJWs. And you know how I know that is because SJWs, they get really upset about stuff, and they aren't moderates. And guess what? The alt-right also gets upset about stuff, and they aren't moderates. Now some would say that they have different arguments, and that the people on the right kind of have like science to back up their stuff. But the SJWs think all white men are evil, and the people in the alt-right, they believe in like evolution applied to like the human race, which is just really, I don't know, kind of the same thing when you really think about it. So yeah, so that's when I came upon this really advanced political concept called the golden mean, and I think I've coined this term, the golden mean. It's right where I am, and I'm kind of like enlightened, you could say. I don't want to brag, but yeah, I'm kind of pretty much enlightened. Because people to my left, they're SJWs, and people to my right, they're like the alt-right, that sort of stuff. The people who believe in that there's like a biological component to actions, that sort of stuff, and that not everybody's the same. They're also SJWs, because they make me kind of uncomfortable with the things they say. So yeah, so that's why when you come across the I was on Reddit and I saw this post called about the horseshoe theory, and it's really true. In the middle, you have, it's like a picture a horseshoe. That's why it's called a horseshoe theory. Picture a horseshoe, and you basically have a horseshoe, and the people in the middle of the horseshoe are good, and the people on the left of the horseshoe on the far end, and people on the right and the far end are essentially the same exact people. And that's why you have you have like really far left-wing Jews who, they're pretty much the same as skinhead Nazis. It really just makes sense if you think about it, just think about it. Now some say that it's overly simplistic, but they're wrong. Alright, now back to my original point about how my channel, like what it's trying to do, and what it's trying to accomplish. And some say that you're not really accomplishing much, you're focusing on the fringes of the left and the right sometimes. But I say, screw you, man. If you don't understand what I'm doing, I'm documenting all this. And some people say, oh, you're not really pushing for anything. You're pretty much just in this little bubble where you don't stand for anything. You just like to criticize people. And to that I say, oh, I stand for something. I stand for moderation, because when one side, when the left is pushing for all this, like legalizing pedophilia and mass migration, the best thing to do is to remain calm and just try to talk with them. Because if you don't talk with them, then you're never going to convince people with like shaved heads and blue hair and weird gender identities to agree with you, because they're reasonable people. They just need to be talked to. You can't say, oh no, my point of view is right. You say, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this from a good perspective, where we just talk about the crazy people. We'll make fun of them, and we won't actually stand for anything, because that's standing for stuff. Well, you might say I'm jaded. I like to say I'm pragmatic. If I don't stand for things, then how can I ever be wrong, and how can I ever fail? It's much easier to be a commentator, and it's morally better, because if you actually stand for stuff, then you need to kind of like back it up. And sometimes if you back it up, if I was just say if I was like a right winger and I stood for the right wing ideas, I might have to back that stuff up. And if I had to back it up, I probably have to bring up like mean things, and mean things just aren't really nice unless you're making fun of people with blue hair and shaved heads. So yeah, that's about that for this video. Tune in next week as I dissect the flaws in evolution and how it doesn't apply to human beings, even though it applies to every other animal on the planet, and why crime rates that differ across races don't matter to immigration, because we should all judge individuals individually, especially when making policies, because when you all know that you make policies based on edge cases, not the mean of a group.